Greetings and God bless. I just wanted to make an observation about what I think is engineered decision fatigue. So there's so many people who are doing some great work about helping people declutter, organize, time management, stress management. And I don't feel there's enough of a spotlight on this engineered overwhelm that's being focused on the average person with the telemarketing, the spam calls, the phishing calls, the spoofing calls, and then the emails. And not to mention junk mail that's been haunting us, since whenever. And so sometime, I don't know, it was like 2008, maybe. I don't exactly remember, maybe 2006 or 10, but I was getting spam calls, like robocalls, for nothing. I mean, for things that I never signed up for, that I didn't have any connection with, and it was like every minute. And so I called the telephone company. I was like, yeah, let's just change my number because I can't seem to get these to stop. So I changed my number, and within like 30 minutes, I was getting spam calls with the new number. And that made me realize that I think there's some sort of deliberate targeting. And I think that a lot of this is to wear us away. And I don't know if this kind of thing is happening in other countries, but I feel like Americans are targeted so much, just with the poisoning of the food, air, water, medicine, thoughts, media, education. And you cannot even have peace in your own home or on your own devices because I think there is a deep state kind of a thing where they're trying to drive you crazy, basically. And if they can't do it with, you know, one thing, they'll do it with another thing. Um, and I'm just, talking about this right now because Google did some sort of weird update and I'm unable to use my VoIP telephone service. And AT&T a couple weeks ago, for some reason, even though they sold me a phone the year before, saying that it was a 5G phone, a couple weeks ago they said no, it's not. So now they're making me buy a new phone, so I have no mobile phone. And I mean, talk about timing. And I'm about to move in a couple weeks, so um, this is an interesting coincidence that both of my phone devices have been sabotaged, it seems, and some people will tell me, oh, it's no big deal. Oh, you just lost track of things. But, I've had this phone since probably 2005, or this number, since 2005. Since 2005. It is now 2022. So, like, I can't do the math right now because I'm so flustered, but I've had this phone. It's never been shut down. It's been out of range, but so I have $200 on this phone. It's a prepaid phone, and they just told me it's even though they told me it was working. It was a 5G phone 2 years ago. Now it's not. And they're making me have to go 10 miles somewhere where the bus service here is a nightmare. It stops at 5 o'clock, so you have to make sure to be there, and there's no decent shelters signage to even know how to get home. So it's incredibly inconvenient. And though it is very interesting that Google now did some sort of weird update, I do not know how. And I've had this Google phone, since about the same time. I mean, I might have had it since like, I don't know, 2000. I mean, when did Google Voice, or what was it before? But I had the phone number like from the very beginning. I mean, I don't know, maybe 15 years or something like that. And so both of my telecommunication devices have failed within 2 weeks of each other. And I would say maybe the past like year I've been getting like cyber attacked, like getting so many spam emails, about things that aren't relevant to me. And I know a lot of people who are like, yeah, I get like 25 calls a day of telecom, of telemarketers or robocalls. And the thing is, everybody just takes it for granted and they just roll with it. And so I looked into it. I looked into like what are our legal rights? And basically, if you really get into it, there's no legal protection for consumers. Yes, there's a do not call list, which does nothing. Who knows? Who knows if the do not call list is where the deep state finds who to harass? Because why not? There's a war against we the people. The government, yes, there might be three people in the police or in the Senate or whatever that are doing good things. Praise the Lord. But it seems like the majority could care less and are clueless. And uh, and I just think that there's this deliberate death by a thousand paper cuts. You know, and yes, there's human trafficking, right? There's all sorts of absolutely unthinkable horror that goes on as well. And I just wonder, like, why is I mean, so we know if anybody reads the Bible that Satan is the ruler of earth, and it's just I just think it's worth noting that there's such an assault on humans, whether it's a blatant, nightmare, terror, riot kind of a thing like we saw with the fires, the peaceful protesting. Um, I do believe that's totally satanic, and I think it was systemic, organized, engineered by people in like government or the private sector or something like that. Because if you look at history, the Bolsheviks did the same thing. And just because it's America doesn't mean that the Bolsheviks couldn't be here. Of course they can be. It is very interesting. Like, people are like, oh, it would never happen in America. I mean, when I was growing up, people would be like, Nazi Germany would never happen in America, in America. And that's totally happening. I mean, the way they started in Nazi Germany was they said that a certain demographic was unclean. Who's considered by the mainstream? Who's considered unclean? What are people doing all the time? They're doing sanitizer all the time, right? So there's this hype about being unclean, and I think that's part of this satanic mindset because what God made is good, and what becomes unclean, let's look into compost. Compost is, some one person's uncleanness is another person's compost. And we are a biome. We have many different microbiomes. And what does sanitizer do? It kills your microbiome. So, if you're busy making homemade sauerkraut, but then rubbing sanitizer on your hands, you're totally defeating the purpose. Not only that, that sanitizer is killing whatever is in the natural water supply because it's a powerful, potent chemical, and it's actually known as like a carcinogen or something like that. But people are just rolling with it. So, anyways, I just think that there's a major onslaught against people with the um, the spam emails and the spoof telephone calls and like sabotage of devices. And I guess people are just like, oh well, I'm just gonna go into debt and buy, spend $100 on, hundreds of dollars on a new device and a new membership. And I just don't want to. I want to live within my means. I don't want to like just spend a whole lot of money and beg other people to cover what you know problems that I didn't plan for. Um, and I guess I'm just wanting heaven because uh, I don't think we should just settle. Like I think a lot of people would be like, oh well, you're just taking it too seriously. You're just taking my 100 spam emails and spoofing calls a day. I'm just taking that too seriously. Like, isn't that what quality of life is about? Like, if you were, let's say, there's a lot of people who are into sports and they're into, they know what their sports team does well and doesn't do well. And people are, screaming at the stadium and stuff or at the TV. Nobody says they're taking it too seriously. People expect you to care about sports or whatever, your latest yoga class or something like that. But when I'm talking about these nuisances, like these like they are they do deplete your quality of life, and people don't care or don't think anybody should talk about it, like, or care about it. I mean, I guess, and that's what we that's why we get the world that we have. Because it's displaced priority. Like, why, like, some people will have their fruit smoothie, but they won't care about, this other thing. Like, I just wonder. So, anyways, I wonder what to do. Like, because both of my telephone systems have gone down in the past 2 weeks, and I've been getting a lot of cyber stuff. Cyber attacks. I've filed all sorts of complaints. Yeah, what do people do? Uh, and I just, it's very interesting because I was watching a video, and this guy was saying how he's an immigrant from another country, and it's great when the United States just, gets a whole bunch of money to take care of immigrants from all over. And I found myself getting upset because, so I'm a descendant of immigrants, and yet, like, as I guess I'm first generation American, um, there is very little support, and there's very little dignity for any support you can get as a first generation American. Now, if I was from Timbuktu, um, and if I was like the demographic they wanted, like if I was from, like, I don't know, because some immigrants, I think, do experience discrimination and classism, but others don't. Like, others are like, and I'm not exactly sure which they are, but I think, like, Asian, for instance. I don't think Asians are the um, preferred immigrant for the progressive liberal mindset and fantasy, like Tibet. That's a very that's a that's a you know it's a country that's been under assault for decades, and I'm no expert in it, but I don't think, like, anybody's like, oh yeah, Tibet, let's help Tibetan immigrants. No, no, they've got this focus on other things, right? That's the focus, that counts, that's aligned with progressive liberal values. And uh and I and, and you know as, so as a I guess first generation American, like, there have been so many obstacles put in my way, and like, people, um like, I think if I had been from one of the progressive liberal, like, poster child immigrant sections, maybe people would have given me the benefit of affirmative action. But like, some, like, I think what I faced was a type of, like, classism and like, competition. Like, people were like, well, and I think certain demographics, and I have to be careful here, but certain demographics would just assume, by looking at me, that I have all sorts of privileges and all sorts of doors open up to me easily, and that, the world is my oyster, and that is not the case. When you look at me, um, you do, as people do have a first impression, just like anybody looks at anybody, you have a first impression. And it's not necessarily skin color. because there's some people with my skin color that you're like, that's a scary person, and you don't feel assurance. But people, so I do get a certain amount of like people who don't know me, like I've been at like 12-step parties or whatever, and in an event, um, and people will feel safe to allow me to be to kind of watch over, let's say, their kids, right? Like, when you just ask yourself, if if um if you were at a shindig and around a 12-step community, and you saw me and you were going to just step away for 3 seconds, would you trust your children who are playing off to the side? Would you trust them with me just kind of being around there? And you would. I mean, I would say, I would, um, I'd be confident that you would, because that just happens. Because I am an older sister, I have, I'm just a responsible person. So, so people will assess my appearance, the sense that I give them, and so I get to pass or not. I mean, some people think I'm too dorky, too goody two shoes, that they don't want me around because they can tell I'm not a party animal, I'm not a drinker, I'm not promiscuous, and I make it clear I believe in Jesus. So yeah, like, I experience a lot of discrimination, and I take it as part of the territory. And a lot of Christians take discrimination and hostile reactions, we take it as part of the territory. And I think a lot of progressive liberals and a lot of people who are claiming to be victimized, you need to get educated, get a clue, um, like, get real, because it's not just about your identity politics. Everybody experiences some form of discrimination or another. The only people I think that have, I mean, even rich people. You know what? I discriminate against rich people. When somebody has their BMW and their little pocket dog and their fancy nails and their hair and their entitlement and their, $1,000 or $4,000 shirt and $10,000 pair of pants, I'm disgusted, because there's people who have nothing, and that rich person is spending $10,000 a month on their dog. So I discriminate. I discriminate against that. So everybody gets some type of discrimination. That's just human nature. And this expectation that people, like the very people who are crying discrimination and oppression, are discriminating because they're being judgmental themselves. They're saying you're doing this. I mean, it's splitting hairs, because on one hand, yeah, you do need to call things out, but I don't think it's a complete thing. And I think the discrimination, like the real discrimination, again, is classism. Because if people were financially independent, if there weren't weird, shady financial things, which I do not understand, if people were allowed to make money without selling drugs and human trafficking and all that, if people were allowed to make money, keep money, and if and thrive, and if cities were allowed to be healthy and productive, there wouldn't be discrimination. But instead, there's like uh, this selectivity, like where people are like, okay, we're going to bring immigrants from somewhere and we're going to dump a whole bunch of money on them and give them the sense of entitlement. And well, the Americans that were here originally, well, they're just garbage, and we're going to try to rub them out. We're going to, because they should be, somebody else should be taking care of them. So we're going to ruin any opportunities that they, because we're bringing other people from other places. I don't know, because I have been struggling all of my life to um, to break through the glass ceiling, and and I have seen people who could not construct an English sentence in management positions at career development organizations that I was had applied for a job for. So, and I had a master's, and maybe in their country they had a PhD, but like I have experienced some type of discrimination, and it could be that my degree was not up to par, because I did go to an alternative school, but um, there is discrimination against white people and low income white people here, and I think that that is the invisible oppressed group of the United States, and I would say, and I would expand it, because there's certain oppressed groups, quote unquote, that are favored by the media, and so they get affirmative action, they get whatever services and stuff like that, without like loathing. Like for me, when I have been in the system trying to access support for like voc rehabilitation or food stamps, I have been met with loathing and disgust and abuse, and just like disrespect. And the thing is, like, because when you're in the system and you're dependent on it, you don't feel like you can say anything, um, and I think they know it. So, um, yeah, I just don't understand, and it makes me wonder if there's some type of like kind of energy thing, because I don't feel comfortable accessing government services, even though I understand it comes out of my trust, and they're probably making heaps of money from selling my trust, from the account that's associated with your birth certificate. So, I mean, no government organization that is providing services is doing it out of charity or out of integrity. They're doing it because it's making money. It's some type of human trafficking thing. It's a like just know the government is a big organized human trafficking organization, and it's only when locals are lucid and active that and protect the people that are in the system, because it gets really bad really fast, and there's no nobody watching, nobody protecting the public within the government. It's only we the people that do, and it's very complicated, and the government is big, and it knows how to wear you out and demoralize you, and it's definitely done that with me. And I think like people's apathy and their ignorance about um, like my demographic, like the clean, sober, um, low income uh, white person, I guess you could say. And it's not just white people. It's like the unpopular poor, because who's popular? It's like Latino and Black people, like whether it's American or um, like refugee or something like that, sanctuary city kind of people. But when, like I was saying, like the Asians, like that's, you don't hear any progressive liberals saying Tibetan rights. Like, when have you heard that within the past 15 years, right? Like Vietnamese, homeless rights. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we have a lot of that demographic. Um, so, anyways, I'm just saying that there's decent people who contribute to the community by their mere presence that are thrown under the bus, ignored, and disrespected, and like like it is not up to just the one individual to create the world from the ground up. And I do feel that to be the case. Like right now, as of May 2022, I feel like there's this expectation that somehow I am supposed to just make everything happen myself. And I can't create a city. I can't create a home. I can't create a suburb on my own. And I'm doing everything I possibly can to plug myself into a place that I would fit, and it is near impossible. And I know I'm not the only one. And so many people. I'm just constantly hearing people bash for entry level workers, like like the people who work at the, your local burger joint, your McDonald's or whatever. And people are complaining about restaurants not being fully staffed. And the thing is, what entry level employees are having to deal with having to suffocate, having to do medical procedures, like people impersonating doctors, trying to force entry level employees who, like, they're entry level employees. They're not corporate CEO with $1 million income a year. Like and the thing is, like, nobody's protecting them. OSHA is not protecting these people. So these entry level people, they have like limited energy, they have limited resources, and they're going to have to live with themselves after this year, after the past couple of years. And those who are opting out, I think, are being very wise. And so many insulated, sheltered, I would say wealthy people or middle class people, they're bashing these entry level workers for not sacrificing their bodies. And that's the thing. Like, people just assume entry level workers should sacrifice themselves, just go through hell. And just know, entry level jobs are hellish jobs. There's no protection. I mean, other than like murdering or raping people, like, most jobs are just terrible workplaces, bad air quality, like constant loud noises, terrible chemicals. I mean, it's like a, trying to kill people kind of a place. And so I just think there's this ignorance and this hypocrisy and this selfishness and entitlement that people display towards entry level workers. And I want you to know, entry level workers are the most important people in the world, because those entry level workers make it possible for you to buy your gas, buy your food, take care of essentials while you go off and, live your fancy dancy life, and do your probably more useless paper pushing and, whatever stuff that you do. And yes, I'm sure what you do is important and valuable, but and then constantly, like in my research, everybody's like complaining about the homelessness. So a lot of people who are being responsible, they're investors and they own real estate, and so they're charging these rates that the people that those working class entry level people, they can't afford. So some entry level person is making $12 an hour, and working 40 hours a week, maybe not even, maybe 30 hours because the company doesn't want to have to pay for benefits. So maybe the person after taxes, gets like $300 a week, times that by four, that's $1,200. But most rents for an apartment is $1,500. So these investors have these crazy high rates, and so that makes then people have to be married. They have to have two income households in order to just pay rent. And so these people aren't necessarily married to somebody who's appropriate or whatever, who, it's not necessarily a good relationship. And it's just this financial arrangement to be able to have shelter. And if I was a property owner, I'd probably think this was fine too. But just coming from a renter's perspective, I do think that you should have your property equivalent with the people that are working there. Like, so if everybody's getting paid $12 an hour, your rent, should be maybe $400 or $500, so that it's a third of what the average wage is. But no, people have to make. They're like charging four times the amount that an entry level employee can afford. And so people be like, well, that's what people are paying in Seattle or Silicon Valley, and you're in the middle of like Missouri and you're charging that much. It's so despicable and disgusting. And you get what you deserve. I'm in the middle of South Dakota and people have these crazy rents. I mean, there's number one, there's no rentals. There's very few rentals. And the rentals that are there are just overpriced, and it's not worth what you get for being here. Um, and then people are complaining about homeless people. Now, when the rents are more than the entry level workers can afford, what are you supposed to do when there's literally no housing? And so people are like complaining about the homeless people. And I mean, so the homeless shelters are overrun and uh, understaffed, and and so people are uh, you know just trying to live, right. They're out there in their tents, and what we see depicted are the worst of the worst. Some like really scary videos out there, and that is the fault, I think, of the investors with these rents that are four times what people can pay. I think and I think the investors in the real estate market, pretty much nationwide, they're just expecting everybody to get on Section 8. So the government is paying $1,500 a month for the slum that property that investor will have. And so people are bashing people for being on services, but that's who the real estate agents and the investors want. They want people to get on Section 8. So those real estate agents and investors they're on welfare, and they're planning to be on welfare. And yet people will bash poor people who are actually just trying to get services. And yes, I know there's people who scam the system, but I have met people who have been in the system, and um, I don't know if they were on Section 8 and stuff like that, but those that I've known who have gotten food stamps, they needed it. They were not doing well. They were unable to navigate the workplace because it's become progressively abusive, and the good people that know how to handle abusive people have left the workplace. They're creating their own businesses because the workplace has become toxic. It's too toxic. It's unlivable. And so the only people that are left now that I notice in the workplace are those who can stand the abuse, and these developmentally disabled, or like ADD, ADHD, Asperger's type of people. Like, that's who I'm seeing in the workplace, not like people who kind of have all of their functionality. And I think that people should stop bashing the homeless people, because the way investors have it set up, they're causing the homeless crisis. If you want the homeless crisis to stop, decrease your rent by a third. Just take a look at what entry level people are making. If it's $1,200, then make your rent $300 a month for an apartment, or $400 a month, or even $500 a month for an apartment. And there was one other thing I wanted to say, but I lost it. But anyways, I think that is fair. Just stop bashing the homeless people. Stop bashing the entry level people. They have a lot they're dealing with, and yes, we do see people on drugs, because being homeless is a very brutal, barbaric life, and cities do not help it enough. And I'm pretty sure there are homeless people who are getting their PhD, or who are working at the post office or something like that, and they just can't afford the rents. I mean, there's all these homeless encampments with Wi-Fi in Seattle and San Francisco, and nobody's really kind of doing a feature on that. Like, yeah, these are functional homeless people that are contributing to society, and that society refuses to give them their human rights, their basic rights to a toilet and a shower and a safe roof over their heads. So I think there's just more to this situation, and I think that um, the people who are complaining about entry level workers and the homeless, those are the people who are culprits. And, unless you're going to stop being so greedy, because that's what's going on. I think there's just this disgusting demonic greed, and this weird competition, like, oh, I'm not going to charge a decent amount because the other the other real estate don't charge decent amount. They overcharge by 4 times, so I have to. I mean, it's like, I don't get it. So, when you make your city impossible for entry level workers to function, uh, this is what you get. And don't bash people for not sacrificing themselves to do your shit job. Don't bash people for not becoming your slave. I mean, being an entry level worker is very much a wage slave. There's not The only good thing about it is working with your coworkers, because the job itself is usually pretty crummy. It's degrading, disrespectful, and you're at the mercy of a stupid corporation who could care less. And maybe there's like 5 companies that give a hoot about their employees, but generally, no, they're not. They're not. It's just this modern slavery. So just don't think that people should kill themselves and be committing soul suicide just so you can get your burger and your cup of coffee and your gas. If you want people to be there to give you your morning muffin and your coffee, make sure that there's a place that people can live and that they can afford. And I would just also say, make your area walkable with some public transportation. So, anyways, that was a long thought there. Thanks for watching. God bless.